All right, we'll go ahead and get started now. It is 3:30. So let me just introduce myself first because I see a few new names on here, which is exciting. We get a lot of the same people coming to our webinars most of the time. So it's always good to see some new names pop up. I'm Kristen Purvis. I'm the instructional or senior instructional designer now. And I have Terry Locklear joining me. I'm going to be presenting, but just wanted to introduce him. He's our interim director in our department. So if you have any instructional design questions, you can come to me or him and we'll be able to help you out. Today, we're going to be talking about learning styles, which is something you've probably all heard of. But they have been discredited as a good pedagogical approach to teaching, and we're going to talk about that a little bit and look at some research that's been done into that, and 3 myths that persist about learning styles and how they can affect your teaching. So without further ado, let me see, I've got a chat message. Okay, thank you for the heads up that you're driving in the chat box. That's totally fine. There's no interactive activities in this particular webinar, so yeah, just listening is completely fine. All right, so the agenda for today, as I briefly mentioned just a moment ago, first we're going to discover why the concept of individual learning styles is not scientifically backed and can actually impede effective learning. And then we're going to explore some learning activities and tools that encompass all of the learning styles, since students benefit most from those kinds of activities rather than ones that are focused on one particular style. All right, so first, what are learning styles? In a word, disproven, and we're going to look at the research that backs that up, but it still persists as a popular pedagogical concept. Like many misconceptions about learning and the brain, the belief in learning style stems from an incorrect interpretation of valid research findings and scientifically established facts. For example, it is true that different types of information are processed in different parts of the brain, and it's also true that individuals have differences in abilities and preferences. Since the 1970s, however, research has shown that the validity of learning styles and their application to education have come to the same conclusion, that despite the intuitive appeal of them, there's little to no empirical evidence that learning styles are real. So the fields of cognitive psychology and neuroscience consider them to be a neuromyth, and they disavow the practice of matching instruction to individuals' preferred learning styles to promote learning. And then from a particular article I looked at, despite the overwhelming evidence, more than 90% of people believe that students learn better if they're taught in their predominant learning style. And when I was in school, it was just these 3: visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. But now there's a 4th one added, reading and writing, but they are all incorrect. So you don't need to worry about your students having a particular learning style or trying to adapt your materials to suit their particular style. And here is why. There's these 3 specific myths that persist about learning styles, and that's number 1, that a learner actually has a certain optimal learning style. Number 2, that the learner is aware of what that personal learning style is, and or there is a reliable and valid way to determine this style. And number 3, that optimal learning and instruction entails first determining this learning style and then aligning instruction accordingly. And I've got the citation from the article I got that from down here. So let's take a deeper look at myth number 1. And that's a learner actually has a certain optimal learning style. So learning styles poorly classify and can actually pigeonhole your learners because they'll take these self-assessments most of the time where they answer questions about themselves, and then they are determined to either be a visual learner or a kinesthetic learner or auditory learner or a reading and writing learner. Those tests are not always accurate. Very rarely are they accurate. And Furthermore, most of the styles that have been determined are based on types, and the learner is not assigned to a style based on a set of scores on different dimensions, but rather is classified into a specific and often exclusive group. But nobody learns just from seeing things. Nobody's 100% a visual learner or 100% auditory. We use all of our senses for learning. And so it's vital to incorporate all of your senses into your materials whenever possible. And lastly, most differences between people on whatever dimension one might think up are gradual and not nominal. Are there any questions before I go on to myth number 2? All right. So myth number 2 is that the learner is aware of what their personal learning style is, and or there is a reliable and valid way to determine their style. So inconsistencies and low reliabilities for the measurement of learning styles, such as when individuals complete a particular measurement at 2 different points in time. So maybe when you're in elementary school, I tested as a visual learner. And then I think when I was in high school, I tested as a kinesthetic learner. So the results are always going to be different, but I don't think that necessarily means that that individual has changed their learning style. It just depends on how they answer the questions on that particular day, or they might be thinking about a specific assignment they did that really resonated with them recently. And so they'll get a different result depending just what time they take the test and how old they are, and different external factors. And since the self-reported way of doing it is the preferred way of determining the learning style, it's often a bad predictor of how the person learns most effectively, because as we all know, what people prefer is not always what's best for them. Maybe you prefer to just read everything, but not do things with your hands. But if you're learning how to do carpentry, for example, you won't really learn how to do it if you just read about it. You've really got to use your hands to learn how to do carpentry, and that can apply to different studies as well. And finally, myth number 3 is that optimal learning and instruction entails first determining a learner's learning style and then aligning instruction accordingly. And this is a quote from one of the articles that I researched. It's that lessons need not be designed in different ways as per learners' intelligences, but that different experiences offered students access to learning at points across a topic. So you don't need to figure out your students' learning style in order to deliver high quality instruction to them. Instead, it's best to create a rich array of educational materials and assignments, and the variety of those will help keep your students engaged and learn the material. If it's appealing to all the different learning styles, then it's going to resonate with them one way or another. So that's it for the myths. Now we're going to take a look at item number 2 on the agenda, which is exploring a couple different ideas and tools that do incorporate all of the different learning styles and how you can use them in your classroom. So before we move on to that, are there any questions about the myths that we just explored, or the references and where I found the information from?
No questions, but yeah, I'm a cognitive psychologist, and everything you're saying is true.
Great.
So you got the research right.
Oh, thank you. It's nice to have that validation. All righty. So this is just a little slide I made to give a visual representation of some different activities and different ways you can arrange your materials for teaching the students. So each of these are things that you can do as an instructor to convey the information to them, or you can have your students do these as assignments. So let me look at my notes here. Multimedia activities are ideal, and like I said, these can be student submitted or your own instructional materials. And I've got 7 on here. So you don't have to use all of these. It's actually better if you just pick a few and focus on those and do a really, really good job with them. Because students can get overwhelmed. There's like two sides of the spectrum. They can be bored and disengaged, or they've got too much going on and too many technologies, and then they feel overwhelmed, and then they end up back over here where they're disengaged because they feel overwhelmed and they just kind of freeze up. So if you pick 1 or 2 or maybe 3, if you're really, really technologically confident, I think that would be best for a semester-long class for your students. So YouTube videos with captions or transcript are really good. TED Talks are ideal. I watched a lot of TED Talks when I was in graduate school, and then we would either write a discussion post about it or do further research into what the TED Talk was about, and then we could make one thing I did was make a website, and I'll talk about the tool that we used for that on the next slide. You could do a photo collage with a short essay. Introduction videos are fun, and that's a good alternative to text-based discussions on Canvas. You know, we have the discussion boards where students can reply to a prompt and then talk amongst themselves. Another tool we'll talk about on the next slide is called Flip, which you may have heard about. It used to be called Flipgrid, but you would record a video prompt, and then the students would respond to that prompt, and then they can respond to other students. So that's really great for online classes in particular, because some of that in-person interaction is definitely lost when everything is online. But if you have a video instead of a text-based discussion, it helps students feel more connected and to hear another person's voice and see their face and everything. And it works great to introduce them to their instructor as well. What else? Podcasts would be good for audio. You could also have them do an interview with a subject matter expert, or post your own interview with a subject matter expert or one that you found online. Games are always good. I'll talk about Jeopardy Labs on the next slide, well, 2 slides from now. Polls are good if you do a lot of Zooming for your class. You can use the poll feature in Zoom. You could, if you're feeling really motivated, you could do some interactive videos in the slideshows using Camtasia or Nearpod. And those are both tools that we offer licenses for through the Office of Online Learning. We have a Camtasia users community and a Nearpod users community. And lastly, I have websites, which I talked about that a little bit. And so that could either be a website that you have found and you want to share with them, or if they have done their own research, they could create their own website and post pictures and text and videos and all kinds of stuff. So that's one of my favorite assignments to do because it just allows so much creative freedom for the student. And it's just a good like landing page for all of their different materials to show that they have photos and text and video and whatever else they use to reach their conclusions. So now we'll look at some of the specific tools you can use for those. Google Drive, it's just where all of these things are hosted. So it doesn't actually do anything other than serve as a landing page for all of these different tools. But you've got Docs, and it's basically like Microsoft Word, but it's more collaborative. People can work on it at the same time, and you'll see the updates in real time. It's ideal for group essays if you do a lot of group projects in your class. Google Slides is what I'm using right now. It's very similar to PowerPoint, but it's also collaborative because it's all online and it updates in real time. Also great for group projects. Google Forms is for gathering data, and my favorite way to use this in a class is as an exit ticket. So it's pretty much just like a little short quiz that you give your students at the end of class with a few questions just to make sure they were paying attention. It's also something you could do for class introductions. If if you don't want to ask your students to make videos, they could submit a Google form with some information about themselves. Sheets, very similar to Excel. It's also collaborative. All of these are collaborative, but similar to Excel, and it updates in real time. So, and then Google Sites is what I used for making my websites when I was in school. It's very simple and user-friendly, and it's a great way to host multimedia projects. And lastly is Jamboard, which is an interactive digital whiteboard. And if you want to learn more about Jamboard, I'm doing a session on it this Thursday, so 2 days from now at 3:30 again. And this is the last slide, and it's got all of the non-Google tools. So we talked about Flip very briefly. It used to be called Flipgrid, now it is Flip, and it has a new logo. So that would be an alternative to a text-based discussion board. Storyboard, that is used for making web comics. I like to use it for case-based learning. It's also good for representing diverse populations because it's basically a comic creator, and they have pre-made characters that you can choose from and different backgrounds based on time periods and everything. And you can customize those characters to look however you want them to look. Image Flip is another one, and that's for making like a meme assignment. So that would just be a fun and creative low stakes assignment. That wouldn't be for anything you'd want to grade on too heavy of a percentage, because they would just be making like an internet meme, but based on information from the class. And I have more information on that in a webinar I did previously, and I'll put the link to that in the chat once we finish up. Jeopardy Labs, you can use that for trivia in your class, and that's exactly what it sounds like. You get the big blue screen with the columns and the categories across the top, and people choose the category and the amount, and then they see a question or an answer rather, and then they answer it as a question, or you can have it so it asks a question and then the other side is they answer, if you want to do it that way instead of classic Jeopardy style. And lastly is Canva, not Canvas. Those are easy to mix up, but it's called Canva, and it's used for graphic design and making things like flyers. I use it for infographics. So if you have a lot of data in your class, it could be good for that. Or if you want your students to get more comfortable doing graphic design or marketing, anything like that, they can use Canva, and it is free. They have an upgraded version, but I've been completely satisfied using the free version. It's got plenty of things to choose from. They've got templates and different graphics you can just plug into the template. So I've always been able to find something that works for the design I want to do with the free version. So that's it for the tools. This is the conclusion. Here's all my citations from today. This is me. And there's my email address. And if you want to book a one-on-one consultation with me, those are 1 hour long by default. And we can do that here in my office or via Zoom. And I can help with things like optimizing your class materials, or if you have a specific issue going on in your class with maybe like students aren't as engaged with the material as they should be, we can come up with some ideas for how to address that. So yeah, are there any questions about the tools we went over or any of the research, anything at all? All right, well, I will go ahead and drop this link to my webinar I did on student engagement, because it talks more about the specific activities you can do with those tools. So yeah, hopefully that might help inspire you. You're welcome. Thank you, Amy. And if anyone wants a copy of this PowerPoint, please just let me know and I will email it to you. And I made it so that these all have clickable links. If you're interested in using any of these tools, just, and some of them actually have demos attached, like this Jamboard one has a demo, and you're welcome to play around on that and post things if you want. And the flip one also, I made like a scratch pad of sorts, I guess. It's just like a demo flip grid, so you can see how it looks from the student's perspective. And I posted a couple videos as if I were the instructor, and you can respond to those if you want to just test out how that works. And the cool thing about Flip is you can just log in with your UNCP credentials. You don't have to sign up for a new account or anything like that. You just click on log in with Microsoft and do your UNCP credentials, and there you go. All righty, well, that wraps it up. I will send a copy of this presentation to Leslie. And yep, thank you all for attending, and I'll be here if you have any follow-up questions you want to send me by email or book a consultation. Thank you. I'll send it to you as well, Amy. Thanks.